regard to some of the performance elements, we've made some really important steps in the next few months. We will actually, our football department in particular, will move into the new rectangular stadium, which is a spectacular stadium. Again, it lacks, for us, some of the control elements. We are sharing the facilities with two other clubs. We think that's going to be a very workable relationships, but we also think there's going to be, some really good economies which we can evolve and develop with those clubs, and potentially the sharing of not only the resources but also the, some key personnel who the clubs mightn't be able to justify as full-time people in their own right, but may be able to share in regard to maybe biomechanists and dietitians who are rarely full-time but are critical to your player development programs, and so that is an opportunity that we're currently exploring. We've signed a 21-year lease. That gives us a really strong positioning for not only where we sit now and a great sense of confidence in regard to that, but also gives us good leverage if any other opportunities come up, and there's been talk about a facility at the Docklands. And again, from a position where we were 18 months ago of having no leverage and no means by which we could actually establish any sort of meaningful relationships with government or narrative with government, we're now in a relatively strong position. We also get our training ground at Gosh's Paddock, which is roughly MCG-sized ground, which is important because you're then training in an environment which replicates what you play in, and that's important. The quality of the facilities themselves are outstanding. We're in the shadows of the MCG, so that becomes important as far as identity is concerned. It doesn't reduce, and in fact I think potentially can enhance our relationship at Casey, which is fundamental to another aspect of what you seek to do with your facilities, and that's build a sense of community within in and around what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's much easier to bring people to your hub rather than send people out, so it's a bit of a spoke and hub sort of mentality in regard to facilities from that perspective as well. So there's some very exciting things actually happening. The difficulty that we have with the current arrangement, and we think it's that much better than what we've got, so we certainly don't want to dilute from its importance, is that we're still segregated over two venues. Our place at the MCG is very important at the moment. It is something that we're very proud of, to be working in and around the ground, and I think anyone who works at the club feels very privileged to walk into the MCG each day as they start their working day. But at the same time, it's, as you would understand, with a stadium of this size, that there are some challenges as a workable space as well. I've had meetings with people, and they've done 3 laps of the ground inside before they've been able to get to the meeting, and walk in red-faced and flustered as they try and find their way into our particular office space. And even from a merchandising point of view, it's a real challenge. And I think anyone who would with any expertise in regard to merchandising would realise our retail space downstairs here is far from adequate, and really doesn't do what we need it to be able to do, both as a branding point of view and also as a accessibility point of view from that perspective. So we've made some really important moves. And they're all going to, and importantly, I think we've maintained this aspect of it. We've kept integrity with our relationship with the MCG, and in fact, we've actually grown it. We're building all the things which then actually, as it does relate to performance, because I think, as I've said many times before, that's a critical element of it all. So the key elements as to what we try to provide in regard to the facilities is firstly this sense of identity, and that's both in regard to your historic perspective, as to where we should be, and we've reasserted in particular our relationship with the MCG from that point of view, and that's been fundamental in regard to that. But it's also this sense of independence as well. You need to have your own sense of place, so you can control, and then in terms of control, that then creates the opportunity at the next level, which is what you have is the need to establish your profit model. And the profit model in regard to that is obviously as it relates to match day and the activities on match day, but it's also as it relates to midweek as well, for want of a better expression. Like, for instance, I went and visited the Crows, and they basically at this stage are generating out of their facilities about an extra $1 million a year just in other activities, whether it's conferencing and people coming in and out of the stadium for other reasons, but also in our case merchandising and all those sorts of things. And the other element which we saw played out last week, which is something I feel I'll put it on the line now, not that comfortable about, but that's obviously the issue in regard to gaming and control as it relates to dollars and profit model from that point of view. And most of the AFL clubs had a really big win last week. And it's interesting that one of the clubs who didn't have any control over facilities to lead into this process is the Kangaroos, and they probably find themselves, at least at this level, a little bit behind the rest of the competition from that point of view. And the other thing, which is probably a little bit contradictory in regard to that, is this notion of community. And that comes back to the identity a little bit as well, so it's not unrelated. And that's where Casey certainly comes into it, to be at the heart of a community, which enables us to do what we need to do as a club is really quite fundamental. So it's a bit more black and white what I'm talking about in regard to this particular Whiteboard Wednesday. But obviously all of these things have been massively challenging for our club. And you can almost, as I said, you can go back to, and I've called it the curse of 1965. And really it's since that date that we've been trying to overcome these things. But I think in just about all ways, we're either on track, as in we've managed to sort of steer our way through most of the issues in regard to that. And Matty Green, our COO, has done a fantastic job as far as that's concerned. Or we're heading down that track, and in some cases, I think potentially, whilst it's a long way off, looking at opportunities which could really set the club up for forever, particularly as it relates to some of these areas, the revenue during the outside of match day and community from that point of view, which obviously then focuses on these other things. So that's a bit of a summary of where we're at with facilities. It's as I said, a little bit different. It's not quite as, if you like, as spiritual in some ways as some of the other Whiteboard Wednesdays, with this notion of high performance with high integrity. But it also really hopefully puts all the Melbourne supporters well in the picture as to where we sit from this point onwards. Look forward to playing a game in Darwin this weekend, and go D's.